This is George Lees making a new video on the Bush family, but I want to tell you about how treasonous the Queen of England is first. There are pictures of the Queen of England's financial advisor that are Jacob Wall Trump under Rothschild. There is Trump, yeah, that is the Wall family of Germany. And that is the Rothschild family of Frankfurt. All of them are from the Palatinate in Germany. All of them run all the wars, and the Trump family get out of that by becoming draft dodgers. Yeah, that was actually him. Yeah, just in time to avoid any danger in Vietnam, where they killed millions of Asians thousands of miles from their own homeland, which was not theirs, and that is the killing of all of the pagan Indians in that place. Let me show you the relevance to the Queen of England. There is McCloy, Hitler's Olympic box pre-war. There is McCloy with the bowler hat on, sat next to Adolf. Yeah, that one there is McCloy. Yeah, third in the row. Yeah, and that is the Olympic box pre-war for McCloy. And when you look at him in a direct image in his younger days, he's exactly the same facial structure and appearance as the as Hagen in the Godfather movie. Yeah, that is Hagen. That is also the second in command in the Gladiator movie, the massive German, and that was Hagen, who systematically has been planted into the administrator's role in the White House ever since those guys left their homeland. That is the Fourth Reich in America. Yeah, and Donald is the fifth. So let's move down a little bit. And that one, we're now going to find a friend of the Queen of England, which is relevant to many things in my childhood and no doubt in yours. There is the statement that William Farish meets the Queen of England. Yeah, Royal Dutch Shell, and that is the launch of Standard Oil for the Bush family that becomes the directorates for a man called President Trump, who's the director at ExxonMobil and the other Texaco company. All of it is owned by him as his private wealth. And that's why Queenie is interested in this man. That's the Queen of England, yeah, who meets him all of the time in his American home, because he's a massive part of the mafia operation. And there's his lovely little wife. All of them with Habsburg chin, to show you that none of them, like the Queen of England with the chin and the lip, none of them are indigenous Americans. They're actually murderous Austrians, like the whole of the European nobility became in 1919, after the Treaty of Versailles had meant that all of them were stripped of their titles, and then off to America they go, and many of them transit into England, where they are the current government leaders and the cabinet. Many of them with Aryan blonde features, like a man called Boris, who yesterday afternoon on these computers began to launch an alternative system to the Treasury, which is Bitcoin. And he's lucky enough to have become a billionaire out of Bitcoin trading, because all of it is like the Federal Reserve that allowed the American billionaires to become billionaires, but they're not American, they're out of Germany. Some of them are Rothschilds, some of them are Wells Fargo to make it sound as if they're American, and some of them are just out of Frankfurt, like the leaders of that bank that were the first bosses at the bank. I keep forgetting their name, but all of them got their way through border control, and the German ones are no, I can't remember, but William Farish meets Queen Royal Dutch Shell of Standard Oil for Bush. That becomes Exxon Mobil for Donald Trump. Okay, down we go. And that is the reason why she's interested in making trips to America and allowing them to be reciprocal trips, is that is her way into the cross-war fighting with the enemy and trading with them at the same time. Yeah? William stamps Farish. Yeah, remember that Queen Victoria, the inventor of the stamps in America, she died in 1901, and that is the launch of the Rothschilds big time in all of the European monarchies. As usual, they're not in this story to any great extent. Okay, and there is their hexagram on the symbols that show you that Donald Trump on this side, there he is in his draft dodging days, yeah, and there is Bonnie Prince Charlie and all the Scottish families that used to be related to him, and on this side you have Hillary Roddenroth Clinton coming in to be in contention to be the first female president of America, because she's a massive mobster like her husband, who's the son of Winston Churchill, like the Queen. Yeah, that's her meeting Mr. Farish. Yeah, and her sister, Princess Margaret, is also a half-brother to Bill Clinton in America. He was raised by Lord Beaverbrook, who was the boss at the British propaganda event, which was the Daily Express. Right then, so down we go, and we'll show you how that fits in to the Jumanji comedy for him, who's descended from William the Conqueror, which is why he's called Robin Williams, and Jumanji is the abbey on the Normandy Peninsula that is the naming of the Bishop of Normandy. Yeah, that is the Jumanji's Abbey in Normandy. Yeah, and that is in his role that he's playing here, him as a child, as the Parish family that are actually connected to the monarchy. Do you begin to get the joke now? There is the Parish name, that is the Farish joke, that all of them are trading with their enemies right through the war, and Queen Elizabeth was signing people's birth certificates if they wanted to go to war to to unite the two halves of Korea that my dad was called on to fight for the royal queens that are at the top of the King Jung-il bloodline. They are Bose lions. Yeah, and there's no point in denying it now that Wikipedia have taken it down, because I've got all the images on my websites and in videos like this one. That girl is a lovely actress, and she's called Dunst. You remember me meeting the mother of Dunst in Dundee? And this one's much more beautiful than the mother. I will not say any more. And she's a very responsible person. In her current roles. Right then, down we go. P.S. Schneider was head of the Treasury in the USA in Kirsten Dunst plays wee girl in Jumanji from the Parish family. Isn't it lovely? And she's kind of like somebody that I know. I can't pick that person though. Right then, so down we go. There is Jumanji again, and there's that person. As she grows up, she's lovely. And she's got beautiful dimples that almost allow you to take the conspiracy theory away and actually present it as the Star Wars acting teams. Yeah, and there is Kirsten Dunst, bottom right, and she actually plays the beheaded woman that is Marie Antoinette in Paris. And she's related, Marie Antoinette, in the Mozart movie to Frederick the Great and all of the kings and queens that are the Nazis in Poland and Austria, and they are called the Hohenzollerns, and that is the family tree that Kisa Dugdale, as Dugashvili, is on, and Stalin is the same. There is the declaration that Exxon is now the name of the Bush family's oil company that was Standard Oil. And that's the Bush family that were non-entities until 1937, when they went to America with false names like Sheriff, when they were actually Bush family members before they left, and they had to change it to Sheriff so that they could get into that country. Yeah, and all of them are friends of Tyson, which will come up in the video I'm about to play from the powers that be. There is President Harry Truman of Missouri had called Arnold to testify in hearings on US corporations collaborating with the Nazis. That's Truman, yeah, that took over and swept across Europe, and all the mass rapes and the killing of all of the civilians is greatly to do with him. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. There's another one, I forget what his name is. Ike Eisenhower is even worse in that respect. But Truman is the man that signed the executive order in the plane that allowed Kennedy's killing to be passed on. Oh no, sorry, that was John F. Kennedy. Sorry, it's very complicated. Almost all of the people that went to America and killed their native sons in America, who were the red men that were the Indians, yeah, all of them are mobsters. All of the presidents have to be Freemasons, so every war in the world can be planned in advance, Queenie. How to Take Over the World, a Right Royal Con, with the book by Greg Hallett, who's no longer with us, because he told all of the world about the British royals' illegitimacy and them shagging all of the European monarchs so that they could take over every country in Europe. And they've done that now, and some of the countries got a little bit bolshy, and that is Russia, because they wanted to keep the bank that they ran their country with in their hands, but the Rothschilds will not let you do that if you're a monarch, so they killed that monarch and replaced him. And Andrew Jackson saw what was happening, and it was happening to him in America, so he joined the Russians and fought on their side. When the sun's come out for the first time all day, there is a report on the European trip, October the 12th, 1939, by Mr. W.S. Farish of 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Yeah, and I think we're nearly at the end. There is Frank A. Howard. You get it? Frank A. Howard, the comedian, that is the cover for the Howards of Norfolk, and the massive Dutch and British Christianity scams that meant that the Dutch came down to Cornwall and they fought the naval battles and they launched the United Kingdom and the first Bank of England that ever existed. And the interest rates that were paid to the Bank of England on their loans to the government were 1,250%, which is why none of the ordinary people of the world have a life, because every time they make scams like that, they have to bankrupt all of the participant nations in every country where they own all of the banks, and it's a massive income for them as families. Rothschild, yeah, Tedesco, Trump Heller, Rockefeller, yeah, and on it goes. And that is Donald's family now that are in the process of taking over the world, and they think nothing of killing a reporter who's prepared to tell the stories about false religion and everything that got the Stuart families beheaded, and the families from Germany were appointed, even although they were 50 levels or cousins below Queen Anne, who had to abdicate from the throne, and her son died really young, and that is died in inverted commas. Yeah, all of it is totally ruthless, and they still are. Right then, so there is Standard Oil is principally owned by the British royal family. Shell's chairman, Sir Henry Detterding, helped to sponsor Hitler's rise to power by arrangement with the royal family's Bank of England governor, Montague Norman. And guess who founds the Bank of England and becomes its first boss? That's Rothschild, but they don't get a mention because they are the global imperators. When Grandfather Farish signed the Justice Department's consent decree in March 1942, right in the middle of the war, the government had already started picking its way through the tangled web of world monopoly oil and agreements between Standard Oil for Bush and the Nazis. Many patents and other Nazi-owned aspects of the partnership had been seized by the US alien property custodian. Uncle Sam would not seize Prescott Bush's Union Banking Corporation for another 7 months, from fleshing out of the secret societies that is Skull and Bones. Yeah, we're nearly at the bottom of the images. And there is William Farish, the friend of Queen Elizabeth II, the war criminal, who's on the committee of 300, and many believe that she's her leader, but I've now discovered that her leader, the leader of the committee of 300, who get their whole of their life's income for free, she earns, the Queen of England, £50 million per year, and every year she gets a 25% pay rise on it, still run by the same German families that were robbed blind by the Rothschild family in their earliest deals with King William of Hesse-Kassel and Hanau. Yeah, that is William S. Farish, and that is the launch of the Parish family into Jumanji. Do you see how deceitful the sad warring bastards for cash are? And there is the pictures of the families in Italy that are actually the launch of banking. That is that one in the blue jacket and they all descend to the families that are still in control. That is the Jones that makes the videos on everything that happens in Bohemian Grove, and he sensationalizes things like happened with Weinstein and all of that stuff that you learn, but all of them are in the bloodline banking trees, and that includes the family that is, so they are Roth, they are the Rossi families in the Italian syndicate, but I can't remember the exact name of that person in the Mozart movie, which that is an Amadeus clip from. They were trading and making deals with the Emperor of Austria, who's a Hohenzollern, that is the Kaisers, with the castle, massive structures on the cliff top that is notorious for being Hohenzollern, Hohenlohe, and the Kaiser family that were the cousins, the grandchildren of Queen Victoria as World War I was launched. Sorry, just one other picture, and then we'll show you the official version. Oh no, that's the bottom. And there is Madonna, who's a bloodline tree relative of all of the sad bastards. Yeah, and she's a really intelligent woman, but cannot climb the stairs when she comes to innocent little Scotland, in inverted commas, which has been infected by the corrupted politicians that are Alec Salmond, for cover, that all of them are Rothschild babies out of the test tube, like sturgeon. Sturgeon is the cover for the fish in New Zealand that is nicknamed Schnapper. Yeah, that's Gutel Schnapper on the Rothschild family tree, like all of those heroes, friends of the Queen. Right then, let's just play a little video then, just in case you think I'm making it up. Right then, so this is the Bush crime family, 3 generations of treason. That seems a little bit small, bearing in mind all of them were friends of Tyson even before they left the Palatinate in Germany, where Tysons lived in Mulheim.
Including the Union Banking headquarters at 39 Broad, and their family histories. For instance, did you know about our elected leaders, including our presidents? How much do we really know about their personal backgrounds and their family histories? For instance, did you know that Prescott Bush, the grandfather of our current president, George W. Bush, ran a bank and other Manhattan-based organizations that were actually front companies for the Nazis? U.S. Senator Prescott Bush sat on the board of the Union Banking Corporation. This and other Manhattan-based organizations were actually nest eggs for German industrialist Fritz Thyssen. Thyssen was the main financier for the Nazis. He later published the autobiography, I Paid Hitler.
So let me explain that Prescott has the word Piso in it, and that is the man who corrupted the entire world, wrote the Quran, wrote the Talmud, and wrote the Christian Bible, also the whole of the world could stay in conflict right through its history. His name is the naming of the global police for 2,000 years, and it is Piso. And that's the pistols for George Bush, and that is the pistols for the killing of people like him in the bunker, but all of that is faked up, and all of them are Rothschild bastards, which is possibly not in this movie, but it's acknowledged by many, many people, and I've just downloaded 5 videos on that theme alone this very week. That is Miss Merkel's dad. Yeah, and he was in Hitler Youth. And she was too. Miss Merkel is a Hitler Youth member, and she is the daughter of one of the Adolfs, and he had dozens of body doubles, and many of them died in the bunker, and all of that was reported by the Russian team that then turned tail, and all of it was the massive rape of all of the innocent German civilians. Over 2 million women were raped as civilians.
Even after America had entered World War II, Bush and the Union Banking Corporation continued doing business with the Third Reich. After the start of America's intervention in the war, the U.S. government seized the holdings of the Union Banking Corporation and other Nazi-affiliated companies associated with Prescott Bush. Later, however, with the profits and contacts gained from this venture, Prescott Bush created the Bush family fortune, jump-started his own political career as a U.S. Senator, and established the Bush family dynasty. Prescott Bush was also involved with a steel company that used Nazi slave labor from the concentration camps. 2 Holocaust survivors recently sued the U.S. government and the Bush family for $40 billion.
So that is the Bill Gates families. All of them run the death camps using Jews, and all of it becomes anti-Semitic accusations against the Germans who they used to be.
$1 billion, claiming the Bush dynasty benefited from Auschwitz slave labor during World War II. Many New Yorkers may not be aware that 3 of the former Bush Nazi holding companies had offices in Lower Manhattan, including the Union Banking headquarters at 39 Broadway.
I've been an investigative reporter and a journalist for 35 years. I've worked in every major media market in the United States, and I've written for more than 100 newspapers and magazines nationally.
So I contacted him on Skype yesterday, still not replied. That is the joke for the powers that be, that John Buchan was the man who wrote the novels, The 39 Steps into the War. Yeah, and it's a massive joke that takes in even the world's, Britain's richest people. That is, Lady Jane Grosvenor then married a Donny so that she could pretend that she's nothing to do with the obfuscation of the 39 steps to the war in 1939, with all of the decisions being made by the politicians that are still in that Westminster building acting like Muppets, because they can see the massive bonus that they're going to get in their income streams, yeah, as the poor people get bankrupted all over the world. Yeah, and let's just listen.
And internationally. So last September 17th, I became the first journalist in U.S. history to go to the U.S. National Archives and the Library of Congress and pore over the thousands of pages of documents in both places to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt or any refutation of the facts that Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W. Bush, and George Herbert Walker, his maternal great-grandfather for whom his daddy is named, were Nazi traitors to the country who should have been tried for treason. 2 weeks ago, in early August, a major world newspaper, The Guardian of London, finally got on the story internationally, and they flew a renowned reporter of theirs named Duncan Campbell over to Washington to take me back to the archives and Library of Congress so that they could verify that these explosive documents were real and I didn't have forged copies. Prescott Bush was the grandfather of George W. Bush and the father of George Herbert Walker Bush, and George Herbert Walker Bush is named for his father-in-law, George Herbert Walker. Prescott Bush graduated from Yale in 1917 and was in Skull and Bones, with E. Roland Harriman, who was the younger brother of W. Averill Harriman. The Bush family really had nothing going. They were essentially social climbers and opportunistic people. At the time that Prescott Bush met Dorothy Walker, he was a tire salesman. And George Herbert Walker, as all fathers do when their daughter's going to marry someone, said in his heart, you know, it's not an appropriate thing socially that my daughter marry a tire salesman. So he brought Prescott Bush first into Brown Brothers Harriman and then Union Banking Corporation. In actuality, it was anything but a bank.
So I think that is the company that Alex Jones runs. Yeah, it's a massive, deceitful community of people that are false reporters, and all of that is the ancient mythology that is the sun god Ra's rays, and it becomes the fascist symbol right through world history since the Battle of Quatre Bras for Rothschild to take over more and more tracts of Europe.
It was essentially a Nazi money laundering operation that had a lot of tentacles into a lot of different other businesses. They owned a shipping line called Hamburg American Line, for example, which was the first Nazi front business seized, although the line was no longer operational in 1942. In the early 1930s,
so that's the founding of the Federal Reserve Bank with Amschel Rothschild on the board out of Germany, and with the other Germans that were, it's a much smaller name, but I keep forgetting it. So let's just carry on, because this is in the last two videos I've already made. Sorry, this one lasts a lot longer than his little video on his own.
It transported Nazi spies into the U.S., and then their promotional ads offered cash rewards to any American citizens who would go back.
Jacob Schiff is one of the founders.
Back on Hamburg American lines and proselytized for Hitler 8 months after the U.S. had entered the war. The New York Herald Tribune ran a front page article, Hitler's Angel has $3 million in U.S. bank. And it caused a major scandal and just rocked the world of politics. Brown Brothers Harriman, which George Herbert Walker and Prescott Bush were affiliated with and partners in, worked with I.G. Farben, which operated Auschwitz. Prescott Bush, he did a number of things that were not only...
That's the massive gas chambers and the filing of all of the patents that I mentioned at the beginning. Yeah, that's 2,000 patents were rushed through so that they could make their money from killing all of the ordinary people. Yeah? And that is happening all over Europe, and that is the launch of the Zyklon and the adverts that proclaim for the companies that is Zyklon, that they can kill, I forget what the statistics were, but it's millions of people in a year.
Anti-American, but were pro-Hitler, and he did all that he could to proselytize for Hitler and the rise of his Third Reich, because
So remember that none of these guys, or they pretend that they do not know that Hitler is a Rothschild bastard. Yeah, Alois Hitler was his father, and that his mother was Schicklgruber, and then they had to find parents for him like Bill Clinton in the other direction, and for Bill Clinton it was Beaverbrook, and for them it was Kasner family. Yeah, and they've still got body doubles wandering around the whole of the world, because that is their way of trying to keep out of trouble. Yeah, and those body doubles then take office as law enforcers, like Sheriff Peter Patterson did. He's in many of the movies that come out of Hollywood, and their lookalikes are shapeshifters, and no one can know how that technology is actually handled.
The largest client, Fritz Thiessen, of his patron, W. Averill Harriman, dictated what kind of behavior he would practice to enhance his own career. So he was put on the board of directors of Union Banking Corporation, and he was also a shareholder in Union Banking Corporation along with E. Roland Harriman.
So that is the Harriman brothers that then late in life and much later in this story, they became magnates in New York, and they were then married at that time to the real biological mother of Bill Clinton, who had returned to America, and her name is, she was married to the Churchills, and she was the lover of Winston Churchill, which is why he is the father of the Queen of England and Bill Clinton. So the name of the mother was Pamela Digby Churchill, yeah, and all of it, she became the French ambassador for America, and then she returned to America and married into the industrial families and the political families that were the mayors of New York. It's absolutely treacherous, and all of that is emphasized by this man. But the sun's gone in again. It's absolutely riddled with double agents and triple agents and serial killers, just in case somebody begins to get the story almost complete.
But what's interesting about what the documents show is that they clearly state that all of the shareholders were phantom shareholders for Fritz Thiessen and did his bidding directly. So the point I'm making is it's not as if they bought these shares of stock as a passive investment to hopefully profit from the war. They were directly doing the bidding of the individual who built the Nazi war machine. Some very shocking documents that I saw at the Library of Congress 2 weeks ago on August 10th, on August 9th, excuse me, had to do with the hearings of the McCormick-Dickstein Committee of November 1934.
And that will be Dietrich Stein. All of them are double agents. All of them have diasporaed across the Atlantic to take their place in the Fed and in the back room, and with no knickers on in Marlena's case. Yeah, makes it much more exciting to be at her concerts. That is the Hercules Dietrich tribes that sacked Rome in 150 AD. Elton John, you bad man.
Show that Prescott Bush and the DuPont family, the Remington family, and J.P. Morgan tried to overthrow the U.S. government, assassinate FDR, and put a Hitler-style fascist state in place. I have in my possession...
That is Roosevelt, who's on the Queen of England's bloodline tree, and all of them are massive false news operatives. Even the Able Danger team are Field McConnell. He's a distant cousin of the Dukes of Wellington that fought those battles at Waterloo, and are the victories for ABBA in Eurovision, which was moved out of Europe this year and held in Jerusalem for a laugh.
Testimony from the McCormick-Dickstein Committee in November of 1934 by one of the fascist plotters that they were going to follow Hitler's...
And the Steens, with those families that are the Rose families in Italy, they are aligned with the banking team that is the aristocrats of Eastern Europe again, and that this time is not Trump, but it's the European ambassador for Poland, I think, and their name is it's like an elephant, but it's not Trump. It's oh my God, he's a member of the Charlemagne Prize winning teams, and they are he often appears speaking English when they get troubles in Eastern Europe, and he's something to do with elephants, but it's not Hannibal. It's actually his name. He is... Oh, let's just get on with it. We've already heard this stuff, and I'm quite bored by it already.
Model exactly and impose martial law on the United States, round up unemployed people that were worthless to the economy and troublemakers and Jews and put them into internment camps. And their plan was, if necessary, to exterminate the people that could not be part of the effort. The only reason the coup attempt in 1934 didn't succeed is that they hired the wrong general to lead it, General Smedley Butler, the great Marine hero, two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, who worked with the plotters just long enough to be able to identify who they were and then blew the whistle on them to Congress. Incredibly, after being warned by the FBI and the Justice Department and the Treasury Department to cease and desist in their Nazi dealings, they had continued them until 1951. There had been 28 additional seizures of Nazi assets and Nazi business fronts between late 1940.
So Tusk is the European magnate. That's the emperors of Tusculum, yeah, and the earliest bankers across Europe. Many of them east of the Black Sea, and that is the Rothschilds' launch pad, as Ashkenazi Jews, so that it looks as if they are part of Judaism, and it's nothing to do with that Jewish movement. It's all just a massive, let's deceive the public and take over the world, which is why that book by Greg Hallett has been banned by the Rothschild family, because it defames them for being the real parents of all the false monarchy that now own all of the Rothschilds' wealth in other people's countries. That is the taking over of every federal bank in the world. God bless you, Andrew Jackson.
In 1951, and that they had moved Nazi assets into Switzerland, Brazil, Argentina, and Panama, and they had continued to do business with their primary Nazi patron, who was Fritz Thyssen, who backed Hitler beginning in 1921, and who was the wealthiest man in Germany, and a steel and coal baron who, with his partner Friedrich Flick, essentially built the Nazi war machine along with I.G. Farben.
So you get Piso, that is the name of the pistols, the prisons, yeah, and that is the naming of the police for 2,000 years, and a little bit more.
1951, when Fritz Thyssen died in Argentina, Union Banking Corporation was liquidated by the U.S. government, and Prescott Bush received $1.5 million for his holdings in his Nazi business, and that was the beginning of the Bush family fortune for all intents and purposes. George Bush doesn't take his philosophical foundation from the Bible or the teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. George Bush takes his inspiration from what he learned in Skull and Bones.
So the Bush family tree is the Scherf family tree, and it's got right at the very beginning Gelly Rabal, which is the Betty Grable joke, and that is Gelly Rabal that was the lover of Hitler Rothschild. Yeah, nothing is a secret, and there is the sun god Ra and the Nazis that are Bush.
From the Thule Society that Hitler and Goebbels and Göring cut their teeth in, Bohemian Grove, these evil organizations that perpetrate.
So that's Alex Jones working as an agent for this lot, like the people that are Tusk. Yeah, Donald Tusk, I think he's a Donald too, to make it slightly different from Trump. Yeah, and that is the Polish death camps, and that is Kaiser Wilhelm I and II. Yeah, and that was the name of the ship that took the Germans across to Jekyll Island, where they could make the official secret that is the Federal Reserve banking team, and they demand that the Jackson supporters get out of their way, otherwise they're going to start a war with Russia, which Andrew Jackson joined on the Russian side. But the bad side of Andrew Jackson is that he's notorious for being an Indian massacre leader. Yeah, do you get it? That all of them are compromised, all of them are violent, and you have to be that in ancient America because everybody's got piezo pistols and the rifles that are made even in his list of teams that went to Latin America post-war and declared that they were creating a Nazi state in America right in the middle of the war in 42.
The ugly things that these criminals are doing to this country for which they must be held accountable. Now you look at the Republican National Convention this week and you bring in Arnold Schwarzenegger to speak last night. Schwarzenegger is the son of a Nazi. He has praised Nazis. He has praised Hitler. He talked last night in terms like, we will not falter, we will not waver, we will win this war on terror.
He's a leader who doesn't flinch, who doesn't waver, and does not back down.
Well, that's exactly the speeches that Hitler made after the Reichstag fire. Terrorism and the homeland being under attack are precisely the issues that Hitler used to subvert everything within the German system of government. This is a criminal regime. They not only emulate Hitler, but its genesis comes from Hitler. And I defy anyone, a historian, journalist, author, anyone, to come forward and disprove my premise that you cannot differentiate Hitler's invasion of Poland in 1939 and the Reichstag fire and his attempt to dominate the world from George W. Bush's unprovoked invasion of Iraq and subversion of the Constitution through the Patriot Act after 9.
So they're all in Queen Victoria's family tree. Yeah, with Rick Sansusi and all of the people that get launched into the world as false journalists, and that is, in Rick Sansusi's case, Aung San Suu Kyi. Yeah, and she's allowed to visit London, be taken round with one of the lords of the nation who's actually in charge of the government at that time. I forget his name, but that is the massive incursions and the taking away the identity of that person so that it can cover up Rick Sansusi on the bloodline trees for the illegitimate bastard Germans that took over the throne when the Rothschilds planned the Jacobite revolutions. Yeah, and that is the Jacobites and the new replacements for them in 1714 that were George I to George IV, all of them Rothschild agents in Britain.
And one, which I submit is his Reichstag fire. Karl Rove and his minions are every bit the masters of propaganda that Joseph Goebbels was. They literally took lessons from Goebbels and Goring about how to create such brilliant propaganda that unreality can become reality.
So the Bushes came with Martin Bormann, Goebbels, Scorzerny, and that is Scorzerny was his bodyguard. Yeah, and he is the father of Miss Merkel. Thank you to the Stasi for giving us that information, and to all of the journalists in Germany who have now profiled it with the names of the bastard parents of the Alois Rothschild, who was sired through the loins of the maid in the Rothschild's mansion, and she was Schiegelgruber. That is Salomon Rothschild of Austria. That is the launch of Alex Salmond in the United Kingdom. And that is a massive pan-religious massacre in that United Kingdom, all of it published in the Houses of Parliament web pages. Yeah, where Oliver Cromwell was the boss, and he was the killer of the first Catholic king to be beheaded because he was Catholic. And that is the Rothschilds' books by Greg Hallett that proclaim that the Catholic mansions, the Protestant claimants to the throne who actually won the throne worshipped in secret Catholic chapels in the basement of their Georgian mansions. And that's why they were not beheaded as Catholics, as the popes demanded. And that is the popes that are now the richest landowners in the world and were also Hitler Youth members. Yeah, Pope Benedict is a relative of the Windsor family and of Gwyneth Paltrow, and that is the Isidore linkage to her, and the ancient German families that used to look after Alexander the Great.
And reality can be subverted to fantasy political subterfuge right before your eyes.
On the 21st of November 1934, the following rather chilling article.
So this is us on to new stuff, and it's not new stuff because they're doing the same thing in Britain at the same time. That is in the place where they now have the sporting awards in London, and that is where the Churchill families used to run the Nazi rallies in London, and it became an athletics ground like the pictures that you've just seen of Adolf Hitler, in the Olympics, that are all of the warring nations being asked to march in front of all of the profiteers in those wars.
Here in the New York Times, it concerns the discovery of a planned coup that could have altered the course of American history. Yet today, hardly anyone knows anything about it.
A plot of Wall Street interests to overthrow President Roosevelt and establish a fascist dictatorship backed by a private army of 500,000 ex-soldiers and others appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on Un-American Activities, which began hearings on the charges.
If these long-forgotten accounts can be relied on, I seem to be looking at an attempt to set up a fascist government in the land.
So there's the sun god's rays again. The Statue of Liberty for the biggest jokes in world history and the biggest cause of death right through it.
Land of the free. A coup that could have toppled one of America's most revered presidents, paved the way for a possible alliance with Italy and Germany, and then
picked as a dimwit, so that he could not interfere with the Rothschilds' decision making. And all of it is absolutely typical of what they've now got on the throne. All of them are so inbred that they cannot have viable babies, and all of them have got the Habsburg chins, lips and jaws that were the deaths really young of those Habsburg monarchs of Spain and Austria. All of them fighting against each other on all of the native pagans' lands in Aztec South America and in Indian North America, and in Eskimo Canada, and the Antarctic and the Arctic countries. It's absolutely ruthless.
Thereby changed the complexion of World War II.
Fascism was seen as an example to be learned from because it seemed like a quick fix. All you needed to do was get people to shape up.
You could have had a handful of the wealthiest people in the United States.
So that one is Mussolini, yeah, and that is Italy, yeah, where all of these earliest banks were created, and that is the Piso family, where all of the earliest popes were picked from. That's Al Pacino, and all of the jokes about the owners of Scone Palace that are Lord McAlpine. Kenneth McAlpine in that case.
States found guilty of treason and sentenced to death.
So Geithner is another one of the ancient European families from the Italian peninsula that is now on the Federal Reserve. And he's brave enough to get in front of the camera, but he will not tell you who any of his colleagues on the Federal Reserve Bank that is now owning every country in the world, Rothschild, yeah, ever since she started the trend in Europe with the 5 arrow banks. And I will not tell you what they are because I keep forgetting all 5 of them. Yeah, that's the 5 arrows and the icon for the Rothschild family right through their thieving and serial killing history.
But just what was this plot? Who were the Wall Street interests? Or was this nothing more than a moment of
So that is Arius Piso again. All of his nicknames are included in the whole of world history, and that is why the Panzer Regiment was launched near the death camps at Treblinka by the Hitler Rothschilds' ruthless armies, yeah, and that is the Sudetenland, and the earliest conquest. Panzer is one of Piso's nicknames.
paranoia from a national media not renowned for its self-restraint? Well, the answers to some of these questions may have to wait until I can get my hands on the bulk of the evidence, documents detailing evidence heard behind closed doors by a congressional committee. But I already have the official statement released by that committee when it reported back to...
So do you get that? That is Son of God for Jesus. That is the Sun God that used to be worshipped by all of those pagans, and that is his Jesus's hat. It's actually the pagan god's symbols, and it is the inspiration of every global pagan that has been forced into Christianity, and that is a ruthless serial killing methodology all over the world. And it's alleged to be civilized. It never can be when all of these ruthless people are in charge of law enforcement and the policing.
To Congress, its members clearly had no doubt that a fascist coup was in the offing.
In the last few weeks of the committee's official life, it received evidence showing that certain persons had made an attempt to establish a fascist organization in this country. There is no question that these attempts were discussed, were planned, and might have been placed in execution when and...
So that's Arius Piso all the way to the bank. Yeah, the names of the Lehman brothers are the joke about the man. Yeah, and all of the biggest banking dynasties have links to the man. That is Hitler's treaty with Mannheim and the takeover of Czechoslovakia, which produces 10 million barrels of oil per day. And that railway truck where those negotiations were made in Mannheim is now in Lord Percy's pubs just outside Alnwick. No, sorry, Morpeth. Yeah, and they've got quails in the garden and on the menu, because that is Piso's biblical stories again and again and again, and it's the biggest cause of death because he wrote the Quran and the Talmud too.
And if the financial backers deemed it expedient.
So such a plot, backed by powerful people, was waiting in the wings. That much is very clear. But how did it come to this? Well, it all happened during one of the bleakest moments in US history.
They used to tell me I was building a dream.
The America of 1933 was in the teeth of the Great Depression, a time of extreme poverty, desperation, and the barren plains of the grapes of wrath.
Brother, Penny's paradise.
I've seen millions of families trying to live on income so meager that the pall of family disaster hangs over them.
So they are the outlaw Murrays of Selkirk, just up the road from here. Yeah, and his great-great-grandparents are buried in the Selkirk graveyard, which I was visiting the day I was thrown in the Selkirk jail for telling these stories. And from that point onwards, I was never allowed back in my own home.
Day by day.
Once I built a tower, now it's done. Brother, Penny's paradise.
The Great Depression is not called the Great Depression in this country by accident.
Michael Kazin is Professor of History at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C.
It was the deepest and the longest economic downturn in American history. As many as 1/3 of the labor force was employed in the early 1930s especially. Really the core of the industrial economy was all but shut down.
Say, buddy, Penny's paradise.
All of this added to a sense that American society was coming apart, not just the economy. People no longer had much faith in the authorities at any level, economic or political.
Yet the image of those days we've been left with is not social unrest, fascism and treasonous plots, but one of dignified suffering and resilient faith in the American dream. No one illustrated that better than President Franklin D. Roosevelt, whose New Deal reforms.
The three wise men are all treasonous bastards. That is Winston Churchill, that is the parent of the Queen of England, and she's interested in the Americans that are in this ruthless syndicate. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and all of them think that making movies like Jumanji will take all of the world's global citizens' minds of why none of them are able to know who are the owners of the federal banks that the Rothschilds have stolen in every country on this world, culminating in Iraq and Afghanistan and those countries that were invaded, including Cuba, in the early 21st century. That's Blair and all those families that were taking us into those places and brutalizing the people there who've already become Christians, and otherwise they're demonized as Islamic people because Piso wrote the Quran too, and the Talmud. And Donald's hotel chains are called Taj Mahal after his penis. Yeah, it's really hilarious if you own ExxonMobil as the president who was prepared not to go to war in the massive massacres of the indigenous peoples in Vietnam.
Promised jobs, pride, and fresh hope to ordinary Americans.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President.
So that for Val Doonican, who's the cover for Val Duncan, who was the boss at Rio Tinto for Rothschild. Yeah, that is the joke. That is Delaney's donkey is Jesus in the Bible, and that is the Mulheim joke for Fritz Thyssen in the Palatinate in Germany, right next to Donald's Alsace in Switzerland. Yeah, and all of those German chancellors and famous names that are on their bloodline trees, like Fetzer and Setzer and Pfeiffer, yeah, all of them are having to get out of the public eye and withdraw from their public places on Facebook and on the social media, because it's now really embarrassing for it to be proclaimed that I'm your neighbour in these tiny little towns and villages everywhere, and we're plotting so that we can have the Holocaust and we can own all of the land that used to be your houses and your housing schemes, and we want you out of the way because you're just hungry eaters.
President of the United States, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
And that is they are the victims of Queenie's United Kingdom, because they still pay their taxes and all of it goes to Windsor, which is why she's able to get a 25% pay rise on her 50 million income. All of it comes from taxpayers and ratepayers all across the Commonwealth. Yeah, and the conquered lands that were theirs, and were not allowed to be united lands, which is why they allowed and funded the revolution in America.
FDR's New Deal policies brought an increase in public work programs, more help for the poor, and the removal of the dollar from the gold standard. Yet while history remembers FDR as a visionary saviour in America's hour of need, some at the time saw him in a very different light.
There were some major elements in the business community.
So he got polio when he was young, and that is the polo players. Polo is another nickname for Pizzo. And they love the four-letter words. That's why he's better known as Adi, and Aristotle Onassis is better known as Ari, the Aryan master race that still leads the world.
That hated Roosevelt, and they hated Roosevelt out of all proportion to the scale of the measures that he had actually brought in.
Professor Tony Badger is Master of Clare College, Cambridge, and author of several books on Roosevelt's New Deal.
These were businessmen who essentially thought that Roosevelt was putting America on the wrong road in a big way in 1933, and that it was setting the federal government up as a sort of arbiter and enforcer and intervener in the American economy in a way.
I've told you in recent weeks how the Freemasons construct the Freemasons that are every American parliamentarian, so that they can negotiate in the lodge what is going to be passed and what is going to be blocked. Yeah, and all of that gets them a token bung, yeah, when they obey their leadership teams, who are the chief master masons, who declare all of the wars are going to be started, yeah, and that the Rothschilds are going to be funding both sides at the same time.
That they were deeply afraid of.
Such powerful enemies had been made within 100 days of FDR taking office in 1933.
The business were also aware that out in the country there were demagogues who were making really popular, apparently radical sounding appeals, and they were always worried that Roosevelt was unleashing these forces, would encourage these, what they thought of as crackpots, to wreak havoc.
The right wing in America wasn't going to sit back and let this happen. It's into this world that the plot to overthrow FDR was born. But who was going to lead it, and how did they think they'd get away with it? I'm hoping the answers lie amongst the formerly secret papers of the Congressional Committee that investigated the planned coup. These, I'm told, are locked away in the National Archives of America. It was established.
So that's the Supreme Court where Untermeyer and Brandeis were planted into the decision-making place, and Bill Clinton made the number of Jews up to 5 at that time, and all of it is the massive steal by the presidency from their people. Every one of the presidents has a massive foundation, and it's totally ruthless, yeah, and it's totally immune from any form of inspection, because the CIA is run by the Bushes at the same time as they're running the presidency, as Nazis out of Germany in 1937, calling themselves Geli Rabal, which is the lovers of Hitler Rothschild, their cousin. That's the full cousin of the Queen of England, yeah, and of the owner of the Bank of England, who's Nathan Mayer Rothschild, and the other one that sired all of Queen Vic's bastard babies and made them aristocrats all over the world. And then they assassinate the real families that wanted to be the honest rulers of their country. That is the Russian Tsars, now called Tsar Nikolaevich Romanov Rothschild, and the Heart of Midlothian football club scam by the Romanovs.
To investigate the activities of fascist sympathizers in the US in the early years of Roosevelt's presidency.
It's a very small amount. Only, 4 boxes, 4.5 boxes for what they did in executive session.
So it doesn't look that much, and there's even less than it looks.
For what the committee investigated and how much testimony they heard, yes, I mean, it's a very small amount.
Despite the paucity of...
The week that John F. Kennedy was killed in Boston, the books there were burnt in the library.
Documents, there are some that catch my eye.
Starts with some interesting disputes between the General and the committee. The Chairman, General, you are a retired Commandant of the Marine Corps.
The most important testimony in these records is from a senior commander of the US Marines, Major General Smedley Butler.
I was in the Marine Corps 33 years and 4 months on the active list.
Major General Butler came before the committee of his own free will. He had, he said, been contacted by a well-connected New York City broker called Gerald Maguire. Maguire met Butler a number of times and slowly revealed his audacious plan. He and his financial backers wanted Butler, a highly decorated war hero, hugely respected by rank-and-file soldiers, to rouse an army of World War I veterans, many of whom were angry that a bonus they'd been promised had yet to be paid. The idea was that the general would use these men to help seize the White House, just like Hitler and Mussolini had used their